Hello, this is Lino Tados again, and in this video we're going to continue our journey with Semantic Kernel. Now that we have created a project in Azure AI Foundry and we have a couple of models have deployed already, what I would like to start with is an empty folder for Visual Studio Code, for instance, and go ahead and start creating a project to be able to exercise a simple call into that Azure AI Foundry, for instance, a model that we just created. Before we dive deeper into what Semantic Kernel is and how it works, it might be an important thing to show you how it works right out of the box. You can, of course, use C# with Semantic Kernel. You can use Python. You can use Java. I'm going to stick between C# and Python during all the demos. So the first set of demos will all be in C#, and then I'm going to go ahead and move to Python. So you can get a feeling it's very much the same as long as which one you feel more comfortable with. And they are very close to the functionality as well, availability in Azure AI Foundry and Semantic Kernel as well. I have to say C# has been the one that had the 100% of the functionality so far. Python is not that far behind. I would say it's at par right now. Java is a little bit behind as of the recording in the Q3 of 2025, but probably with time they will all be at par with everything else. So let's go ahead and get started and set up our project in Visual Studio Code. All right, so there we are. We are in a folder that I just created, completely empty. The folder is called YouTube Semantic Kernel. And I would like to start creating my first project. So you can do on the keyboard Control-Shift-P, alrighty. And then you can look from all the .NET in here. You're looking for one that says .NET New Project. Okay, we'll say, yep, go for the new project. It's discovering the project template. There are tons of templates in here. I'm actually looking for a simple one called Console App. Let's click on Console App. It's going to ask me what do you want to call it. I just want them to all be in sequence. So I'm going to create the one called 00. Okay, that's the absolute first one. And we'll say the hello world that everybody needs to start with. So we'll say the hello world project right there. It's going to ask me where would you like to install this folder. Would you like to put it under the YouTube Semantic Kernel /00-hello world? That sounds good to me. And then it's going to ask me, would you like to choose a specific format for the solution? And the reason why I'm getting all that help from Visual Studio Code is because I installed an extension for the C# dev kit. So that's important that you actually do that. Go to the extensions in here, make sure that the C# dev kit, it will just make a lot of things easier when you're working with .NET projects right away. So I'm going to say SLN for solution. It's going to ask me, would you like to actually make that hello world part of that solution? Yes. And immediately you'll notice that there is a new folder in here, which is a new project called Hello World that has the bin and the OBJ files where everything is going to get compiled. I have my project file in here and I have my program.cs in there. The only thing that I did not like is that, of course, it created the solution with exactly the same name as the project. But remember, I'm going to have a lot of projects and I want them all to be part of the solution. So it's an important thing to change the name of this solution. That would be a good idea. So I'm going to come in here, right click on this guy, we'll say rename, and we will give it a name, for instance, something like SK_fundamentals. All right, I think that's a good name. Let's go ahead and push that. And then I'm going to go also in click on that solution, make sure that everything is okay. Yeah, it looks like 00 hello world is being included in that solution. If I go to the hello project in here, the root space is hello world. We can change that later. But the important thing that you do not want to forget is under the .vs code in here. When you go to settings, you'll notice that it's still pointing to the solution called 00. It's not gonna change by itself. So I have to remember to come in here and say SK_ and we pass fundamentals. Alrighty. All right, I'm going to say Control-S to save this, and I'm good with the settings as well. That will make it easier whenever I create more projects, which I probably have about 20 of them that I will create inside of this project. All right, so the hello world is ready to go. So I want to actually open up the project. Notice there is no NuGet packages or anything like that. And the program.cs has just a console. This is hello world. It doesn't do much at all. All right, let's start having fun. I'm going to go to my project in here. You don't need to really be in the project file or anything, but I need to say Control-Shift-P because I would like to install a NuGet package inside of that project. We'll do that, and there is a command called NuGet add NuGet package. So I'm going to click on that, and then it's going to ask me what the name is. So Control-V in here, I'm going to bring in something from my clipboard, Microsoft.Semantic Kernel. Push enter. There are a lot of things that starts with the words Microsoft Semantic Kernel. So when you click that, it's going to find tons of them, and you need to tell it, I really need just the Semantic Kernel one, none of the extra ones for the core or the agents or the YAML. We will use those later, but for right now, I'm just going to bring this guy. And it's going to show me all the latest ones. Actually, the 164 as of the writing or the recording of this video is the latest one. If there is a newer one by the time you see this video, please use the latest. It's fine. We'll say 164. And notice it's installing, and my project file should get a new item group. There it is. And it will say Semantic Kernel version 164, and it's ready to go. All right. So now the only thing left for me is to be able to go to the program.cs. And I'd like to write some code in here to allow me to use all of that stuff. And by the way, folks, if you see a small error here at the bottom saying it could not restore the project, that's because I made the change in the solution name and the VS Code settings, but I did not restart Visual Studio Code. So because of caching reasons, just close Visual Studio Code, restart it again, and everything will be okay. You will see in the output in here, everything will be restored correctly. You don't need to do anything, just closing down and restarting, just because of the changes I made in the name of the solution. That's about it. While I'm here as well, we know we're going to start with the Azure OpenAI, even though, like I said, I'm going to make a lot of videos about OpenAI directly without Azure, and also Mistral and Olama and everything else, okay? But to start with Azure OpenAI, having the Microsoft Semantic Kernel NuGet is not enough. I will need to bring in the connectors. And one of these connectors is the Azure OpenAI. So let's go ahead and bring in this one as well. Control-Shift-P, and then he will say add a NuGet package. He's going to ask me for the name. I can just say Microsoft Semantic Kernel, and then it will give me a list of everything that starts with that, and then I can see which connectors I want. But I know exactly which one that is. It's called connectors.azure OpenAI. I'm going to be pushing enter in there. And hopefully at this point, it will add another line. Oh, let me choose the 164 as well. It's an important thing as well to match the version number. So if you're going to use 164, it needs to be 164 for everything. So you put that in mind as well. And there is the line in my project. That means these two NuGet packages are going to be brought in with no problem. All right, we are ready to go. Let's go to the program. I'm going to delete all the stuff. I don't need that. The first thing I would like to bring in, of course, the Semantic Kernel. And I also would like to bring in a specific namespace that has to do with chat completions. That's the one I'm going to start with. So the using statement will be using Microsoft.Semantic Kernel and using Microsoft Semantic Kernel chat completion. The next part, and I'm going to ask you to forgive me about that, because this is usually not how it's done in real life. I'm going to bring in 3 variables, one for the deployment name, one for the endpoint, one for the API key. I promise you in the future videos, we will do this the right way. You never want to put this inside of your program.cs. Usually there is an environment variables, or the best way to do it, of course, for production is like a key vault, secured key vault to bring all the stuff in. But for my first hello world, I don't want to go outside of the program. I'm going to have everything inside of there. I'm going to use GPT-4o, for instance, and then I will need an endpoint and API key. I'm just saying replace right now, but I'm going to need to go and copy and paste that from our Azure AI Foundry later on. Alrighty? Then the second part is a very important piece, and that's the kernel. Kernel is really the main focal point of Semantic Kernel. Everything happens based on the kernel. It's the orchestrator of the whole thing. So you can actually create a builder, and the code that I'm going to be bringing it in here, let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to create a variable called kernel. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm going to say kernel, which coming in from the Microsoft Semantic Kernel, .create builder. There is multiple ways to do that, and you will see also in multiple videos. Sometimes I'm going to make it based on the create builder ... for building, or sometimes I'm going to have to create the builder by itself, put a semicolon, and use the service object, and we will tell you why do you want to do it this way or the service provider way in future video. But this is, like I said, this is the hello world. I'm going to create the builder. And because I'm using the Semantic Kernel, I have access to add Azure OpenAI chat completion. So obviously there is one going to be add OpenAI chat completion and one Azure OpenAI chat completion. It depends on which one you want to actually use. If you put your cursor over it, you can see that the first variable being passed is deployment name, the second one is the endpoint, and the third one is the API key in here as well. So I'm going to actually put them in here. That's the deployment name, endpoint, and the API key. I think we're in good shape. And now the most important line of code to do the hello world is to create a variable, give it whatever name, but it needs to actually retrieve the service. So we'll say kernel.get required service, and I'm going to use the ChatCompletion service. So it will be able to get that automatically from the kernel. Just because I added the ChatCompletion from Azure OpenAI, it will be able to return that into the ChatCompletion service. And from that point on, this is our variable that will be able to start the chat with the model automatically. And the final piece, of course, this is going to be a console app, so I need the user to ask a question and then I'll give them the response. So I'm going to bring in a while loop, so we'll say while true. So we'll keep asking questions in here until, as you can see, line number 18, until I just don't ask a question, just push enter, that will break and get me out of the program. But usually we will say the user, we'll write this out in the prompt, and then the console.read line will take your question. And the most important line, of course, in here is we will do an await on the chat completion service dot get chat message content async. We're going to make it an async in here, which is great. And it will pass the prompt. The prompt in here will be the question that you ask, and it will give us back the response. This is how easy it is. It's only like maybe 5 or 6 lines of code to be able to start a conversation using Semantic Kernel. Again, I did not go too deep in this. I did not create any history or any memory. Or I did not do any service providers. I did not do a lot of things. Semantic Kernel brings so much to the table, but again, we have to start somewhere. This is good enough code that will allow us to ask questions that will go against the GPT-4o. I can change it to 4.1. I can change it to other things that we're going to see again in future, and I can go after. Okay, so now before I actually run this, I need to replace the endpoint and API key. Let's see how to go get that from the system. All right, we are back into our Azure AI Foundry. We have these 3 models that have been deployed already. The way to get your endpoint and the API key, click on Overview all the way at the top left in there. And you will notice that the main one is the Azure AI Foundry that has the endpoint for the project. That's not what I want, okay? What I want is the second one, the Azure OpenAI. This is what I want, okay? So I'm going to copy that from here, and I'm going to go back into my Visual Studio Code. Let me go in here, and I'm going to replace the endpoint with this endpoint right there. Sounds good? And now one more thing, I need the API key. Where do I get that from? It's right there in front of us. We'll say copy this guy. And I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code again. And it's okay that you see my API key. It's not a big deal because by the time I finish these videos and deploy them, I will actually delete the project. So it's okay. It's important for you to know how it works. But this is my API key for that. And again, it shouldn't really be in that file at all. But hello world will accept that for right now. We'll say Control S, and my program.cs and my entire project is ready to be run. All right, I'm going to open up a terminal here at the bottom. We'll say cd 00 hello world will have to be in that folder, of course. I will clear the terminal, and we'll say, you can say .NET build, or maybe if you're doing a lot of things and you want to make sure it's all clean for the objects and the bin, you can say .NET clean first and then .NET build. But again, this is my first time. I'm going to say .NET run, and it will end up actually building and doing everything it needs to do. So I'm going to say .NET space run. Let's push enter in there. And let's give it a few seconds. It's going to restore all my NuGet packages. It's going to compile my code. And if I've done everything correctly and there are no errors, it should actually show me the user. And it's asking me for a question. So I'm going to come in here and say, why is the sky blue? All right, this is the hello world of AI, right? Why is the sky blue? So we'll push enter in there, and notice it's not streaming, right? It poof, all of a sudden it gave me the entire answer coming in from GPT-4o, and it worked. But again, it's asking me for the next questions because I've been silent a while true in here, right? So I can keep asking questions until I'm done with no characters entered. Just push enter in there and it will exit the program like I told it. So it did a pretty good job. The only thing is sometimes the answers are very long because you're using maybe reasoning and it's taking time to come back. So waiting and seeing a black screen for like 30 seconds might not be a good idea. So again, in the future, we're not going to use this get chat message content async. We're going to use something that uses streaming. That means every time it has something to put on the screen, it will just type it from the left to right. So you can see that there is something coming, which a lot of people enjoy that as more. But again, this is available, get chat message with no streaming, but it will have to wait until the entire response is back until it shows it. Hopefully that was useful to you. Again, if you like the video, please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I will start recording the next one, which we can do this with the OpenAI without Azure. And also we can actually start adding more interesting stuff, semantic kernel, like memories and history and streaming, and a lot of other stuff that semantic kernel makes very, very easily as well.